Good morning. Um, I got out of bed really early today to do this because it's really important. Uh, and then I talked to the machine for 25 minutes and realised the mic wasn't plugged in. So, God, I hope I can repeat the process. Look, this is really important. This is about what we're doing. So, I'm going to post this on a number of places, I think. And one of them will be my own Facebook page. And a few others. I'll ask them for permission first, but I swear a bit, so that's going to be tricky. But the other place I'm going to put it because I'm allowed to, because I'm the admin, and that's on the page that I've called. New Zealand is the name of our country's name is New Zealand. Our country's name is New Zealand. So it's all going to be social media stuff. But anyway, look, for a long time I've known. Look, I'm like you. I'm just an old guy, right? And we're all a bit the same. But, we know we're in trouble. We know the country's in deep trouble, and we've got to try and do something about it. But the first thing we have to do is understand it. We've got to understand what is actually happening. And because a lot of it, we're baffled by a lot of it. And, we can... Look, we've got three branches of the establishment that we have to deal with. One is government, and we can see that's in trouble because, look at what the bastards are doing. Another one is the media, who are completely captured, and we can see that just by turning on the TV at 6 o'clock at night, and we can see we're looking at Nazi style propaganda every night on the news. On the TV news has come. Anybody who cannot see that the television news, including the dipsticks who sort of run it, if they can't see that they've suddenly gone from, more or less reasonable news and more or less reasonable coverage to full-on propaganda, they've got to be blind and stupid. So, media has been taken over by stupid ideas. And, some of them have stayed there just to keep their jobs, I suppose. And the jerk-offs that we've got in Parliament, they're there because we elected them, And so there's a problem with New Zealanders when they elect such trailer trash to the Parliament. Just something strange about it. And so then there's academia. Three branches: media, news, media, Parliament, and academia. And so the thing about what goes on in academia is that's more or less invisible to us ordinary people because, unless you're really watching hard and unless people come out and tell you, you don't know what they're up to. And they're up to no good. The academia in New Zealand are in deeper trouble than they've ever been ever in our history. And they're there right now, and they've sort of transitioned to that place quite quickly. But, the seeds of it have been around for a while. And the seeds of it have been around in these fanciful ideas around the Treaty of Waitangi. And so, I've been struggling to try and get my head around what's actually going on. And I write about it all the time. And I've written hundreds of bloody essays, and I know I've got a reasonable following, people who read it. But, we're in a bubble. But we've got to get out of the bubble. And so to pay lip service to this page that I started that's got, coming up for 700 members, is our country's name is New Zealand. That was my response to try and, I post on places like NZCPR and Silent Majority Team New Zealand and my own page and whatever. But, I know I'm getting into a limited audience. And so, but it's become important. It's actually become vital. It's more than important. It's vital. This is our future we're talking about here. And so yesterday, something really extraordinary happened. And that is that Gillian Lander sent me a clip from Elizabeth Rata. Now, Elizabeth Rata, she's very important. She's an academic. She might be a professor for all I know. I'm not quite sure exactly. But I've seen her name and I know where it's come from. And she's a member of the Listener 7. Now, the Listener 7, all of that is a little bit, obscure probably to most of the people in New Zealand. But you have to understand what the Listener 7 is. Now, the Listener 7, the listener, to begin with, so you all know, the listener is a very left-wing thing that started out as a way of telling you what was on the radio years and years ago. But you can't trust anything that the listener says, and you haven't been able to really for a long time because they got subverted 40 years ago. And so, but at the same time, they're sort of considered to be an important place to have your voice heard. I'm not quite sure why, but anyway, the university people think so. But that could just be part of that culture. And so anyway, Elizabeth Rata and the Listener 7, they're 7 altogether, but 7 academics who realise that they've got together. They've actually taken the trouble to get together and talk between themselves, separate from all that sort of academia sort of mob of strange people. And they've got off to one side and they've said, academia is in trouble. And academia is in deep, deep, deep trouble in New Zealand because they have gone up a blind alley. And it is the same blind alley that the Nazis went up in the 30s. It is. It is completely and absolutely subversive to the society. And that's what Nazism was. And we've got to understand that these people are the problem. They're not the solution to the problem, they are the problem. Because if you get academia back, I think it's going to be very difficult to get academia back because you're never going to be able to free some of these people of this nonsense. But anyway, back to Elizabeth Rata. I've got to try and concentrate and focus. Elizabeth Rata, one of the Listener 7, what the Listener 7 did to become the Listener 7 is they wrote a letter to the listener and in which they said, married knowledge is not the same as science. Now, anybody out there with a half a brain who does anything from stacking bloody shelves to, I don't know, to developing atom bombs in New Zealand, they know that they know that there's a problem. All of us, we all know there's a problem. It's an obvious problem, but the interpretation of it is going to be quite difficult. And I lost my track there a little bit, but I'll get it back. And so Elizabeth Rata and the Listener 7, they wrote this letter. They said, we all know that married knowledge is not science. Even, if I had a dog, the dog would know. And so it's obvious. We're talking about a Stone Age culture. Stone Age? Yep, Stone Age. Stone and wood tools, no fabric, no. The only readily available source of meat was each other, and we've hidden all that sort of stuff. They didn't have clothing, and they didn't have a lot of food, and they fought each other, and they killed each other a lot. And when Europeans came with muskets, they killed each other more because the Europeans sold muskets to them. Why would they say, oh, no, shit, no, you can't have some. Sorry, we're not going to sell you a musket, you a Maori. No, can't do that. But they didn't do that. Maoris come along with money, which they'd earned by trading land, and they bought muskets. That was the first thing they bought. And they came back to New Zealand, and they attacked other Maoris. And people are going to say, oh, that's white people's fault. Well, the white people were reasonable enough to say, well, they've got the same rights as everybody else, sell them a gun. Sold them a gun, what did they do with it? They killed each other. Musket wars, it was called. Killed a hell of a lot of people. And so, and out of that came the Treaty of Waitangi. And so, Elizabeth Rata and their Listener 7. So, Elizabeth Rata, she's just done a speech to the ACT, to people in the ACT party, because the ACT party are the only ones who are going to listen, because the idiots in Labour Green are not going to listen because they are completely subverted and they want you locked in a corner. They want you under complete and utter control. They do. Beware, they're about to have a go at controlling social media. And the other ones, National, are not a hell of a lot better. The National Party are going to go, oh, look, we'll go with the flow. Luxon, he might be a nice man. Okay, invite him to dinner or something. But, he doesn't have flair. He doesn't have substance. And he doesn't have charisma. And, Boris Johnson. If you put Boris Johnson and Luxon side by side, Luxon would be you wouldn't be able to see him for the glow. Really, we need to do better than what we're doing. I'm diverging again. So Elizabeth Rata and the listener 7. So the listener 7 went out on a limb. They wrote this letter, and what happened? Academia attacked them, identified them by name, attacked them in the press, had control of the press. So they give these people a hard time for what? Telling the truth. 7 people came out, wrote a letter which told the truth, and they were attacked by academia. They were academics themselves. They were professors, And so, we've got a bloody problem here, the same as they had in Germany in the 30s. When, like it or not, a whole lot of academics jumped on board with the Nazi philosophy of getting rid of the Jews, even though a large portion of the bloody academia were Jews. They were well educated. It's weirdness going on in New Zealand, and there's the heart of it. So then Elizabeth Rata comes out the other day, and she's made this speech to act. Find it online, and it's an extraordinary speech. And she told me, the speech told me a whole lot of stuff that I already kind of knew, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And the reason I couldn't put my finger on it is because I'm not inside academia. I knew there was rot in the heart of academia. It was obvious. You can see the rot in media, with all except probably one, and it's Mike Hosking. But you can see the rot in the media because they display it every night at 6 o'clock. They've gotten rid of anybody who's European, gone bigger. In the ads, presenting. If you've got a tattoo on your chin, it's a qualification to be a newsreader. Give me a break. And so, it's only recently that married women started doing that. They've hopped on this bloody lunatic bandwagon of marriage supremacy. Marriage supremacy. It's no different to white supremacy, guys. Wake your ideas up. So this is what you're up against, Academia are not the answer. They're the problem. Academia are the problem. And what we've got to do is find ways to tell them that. And that's going to be tricky, to say the very least. But, because they're sort of closed shop. But the people who opened the door to it were the listener 7. And they were vilified for doing that because, they were the chink in the armour. And so now Elizabeth Rata, who was one of the listener 7, she's got up and she's made this speech. And basically, she starts right off at the beginning by saying the thing about the Treaty of Waitangi. And so we all wonder. We have watched the process of the Treaty of Waitangi being changed from a bit of fucking paper that they didn't look after properly into some sort of magical thing that has the answer to everything, including where God comes from. It's the Treaty of Waitangi was a simple agreement between warring Maori tribes and the Crown to try and sort of bring civilization to the Maoris. It was. They were fighting each other and killing each other. The first thing they'd done when they got money is buy muskets, and they were killing each other with guns. And wake the fuck up. It's in the history. And look, people, academia are helping them to change the history. They are rewriting the history. The other people who rewrote the history were the Nazis. Rewriting the history is replacing truth with lies. That's what it is. They have changed the curriculum in your schools, and your children, or your children's children, are being bloody brainwashed into a lunatic idea that Maoris are special, and they're not. But they've separated us off into the Maoris over here who know best, and the white folks over here who built the fucking civilization don't know best. So these tribes over here, because it's all about tribalism, these tribes over here are going to be able to administer everything better than what this tribe can. Because this tribe's got a big problem, and that is that they are the white tribe. And if you stop and think about that, it was the white tribe. When you look at the landscape or the cityscape of Auckland and Wellington and Palmerston North and Eketahuna was built by the white tribe. It wasn't built by the brown tribes, who are now more qualified to run the place than what we are. So, what I've just said will be construed as racism. But sidelining this race, the white tribe, is racism. Just like sidelining the Maori tribe is racism. Just like sidelining the Chinese tribe is racism. We're a race too. But the reality is that why they want to sideline us, because it was us who brought the civilization. The civilization that we live in didn't come from China. It didn't come from Maoridom. It didn't come from Polynesia. It didn't come from Japan. There were two other big, I'm diverging, but there's two big other civilizations on the planet as European society was developing, and they were China and Japan. But they didn't strike the mother lode like we did. Just didn't. They adopted a lot of the trappings of our society. Just did. And Maori were very happy to do that. And so, back to Elizabeth Rata. She said what they've done is they've elevated the Treaty of Waitangi into a kind of wonderful founding document that has mysticism and bullshit and a sort of holier than thou thing that can be reinterpreted every generation by people who are trying to entrench some kind of bloody tribal authority. Tribal authority is tribal authority, I mean, if the tribal authority was based on, I don't know, a tribe in Africa, you would laugh the bloody whole thing out the door. But because we've generated this whole respect thing for Maori culture, I've got to say something about Maori culture. Maori culture is basically Europe. It started off with a little tinge of Maori culture, stirred into a hot drink. It's basically European. Everything about it is European. It is just a derivation of it's a little mixture of Maori culture and European. All of those Maoris live a European existence. They just do. They don't live in grass huts behind stockades anymore. And so Elizabeth Rata, she got up there and she said, we've gone down the wrong path. And it's been encouraged by academia, who sort of believe a whole lot of Marxists. She didn't mention the word Marxist, I got to say, but I listened to her all the way through, and people have got to listen to her. And I haven't done anywhere near as good a job as this as I did just before when I didn't have a bloody microphone. But the thing is that Elizabeth Rata has made a speech at a thing, and it's got to be listened to, but it's quite difficult. We have to grow up. So for all of us people on this particular page that I'm talking about, which is this nation is called New Zealand, we need to go and look at it. You need to take the bloody trouble to grow up, be adult, go and say, I'm going to give this, not 20 minutes, it's a 20-minute long thing. You need to give it an hour, because you need to scroll it back and have another listen to this and another listen to that. Because Elizabeth Rata's used to lecturing university students, She's used to being, she's used to that audience. But I know that our audience here is different. Our audience is more down to earth. And so we need to have a listen and say, what did she say again? And just scroll back. It's easy to do. And have a proper listen. And teach yourself. Try and teach yourself. Because what she's done is she's outlined the basics of what's going on here. It is the most important piece of bloody video I think I've seen. As it relates to New Zealand, because New Zealand's got a problem. Now, I'll go back to the beginning. I'm 19 minutes now. Go back to the beginning. We know we've got a problem. People have joined this thing who don't want to. I mean, the whole business of this nation is called New Zealand. It just picks up on one aspect of this, and that's changing the name of the country. But this is much bigger than changing the name of the country. This whole business is changing the name of the country. Sure as hell, two things that got you guys diverted. One of them was the virus, and the other one was changing the name of the country. We don't like it. But what we don't realise, and what we have to realise and get our heads around, is that behind changing the name of the country, there's something really big and extremely nasty going on. And Elizabeth Rata tries to point it out. And it's a complex subject because it involves government, media, and academia. Media's been taken over. And there's a political clique in there somewhere that involves the likes of Willie Jackson and others, but a whole lot of white ones too. It's not just the brown ones. So a whole lot of white ones are there helping, providing the brain power to subvert to subvert us. And I keep on calling it Marxism, for lack of a better word. But what they're doing is trying to completely change New Zealand society to an authoritarian society that is run along tribal lines. We have to be real people. So we here on this page, this New Zealand, our nation's name is New Zealand. We're only the beginning. I mean, that little emotive thing of, keeping the name of New Zealand probably got you here. But I mean, let yourself learn something and let us have a look at the possibility that we can develop a movement out of this, because otherwise we're just another bunch of idiots with a Facebook page. I mean, it means nothing. I mean, I could delete it with a click. I'm not going to do that, but I mean, what I'm trying to say is, get these things in perspective. The big picture is you and your nation is being subverted by a lunatic idea that is going to take away the freedom, or your freedom, and the freedom of your children, and is going to put vast wealth into the hands of the brown tribes, while defrauding the white tribe. They're not taking it off other Maori tribes. The Maori tribes basically got together and take it off us. And they're using, and the university has helped them, absolutely have been helping them. And because that's why these guys, the Listener 7, stood up and said, stop. So please, people, understand what's going on. Your country is being taken away from you. This is not just changing your country. This is disenfranchising you if you've got white skin. The white tribe are in trouble, and one of the reasons is because they're too reasonable. One of the reasons is because they want to see the best in things. You have to understand. It's you. It's all very well going and clicking like. That's nothing. I don't know. I don't know how we do this, but I've got to try and me and other people have got to try and get you guys to take the next step. And I don't even know what the frigging next step is. But we've got to do something to move on to the next step. And Elizabeth Rata, in her long and difficult speech, she explains what the problem is. We have to, as a group of people, try and figure out what the bloody answer is. And I feel as though sometimes people are looking at, pages like Our Nation is Called New Zealand for the answer. Well, what I'm trying to tell you is I think that part of the answer is here, and I think that this lady should be given a sirhood, because let me tell you, she opened my eyes, because as much as I did know about what was going on, I didn't get the core of it, and she's got to the core of it, but it is hard to listen to. And if you're worried about New Zealand's future, and if you're worried about the name of New Zealand, and if you're worried about your children's education, and if you're worried about what New Zealand's going to turn into, you need to go and listen. You need to suck it up, sit down over the weekend, have a proper listen and a discussion about what she says. Make sure that you understand it. It is her speech, I think, is the most important speech that I have heard in recent years by a long way. So I'm going to stop now, because maybe I should have scripted this, but I didn't. Because it got me out of bed. I just thought, Christ, I've got to say something before it all disappears. And then I spent 25 minutes talking to the thing without the mic turned on. I can't believe I'm that stupid. Okay. I'm going to go back, have a listen, and decide whether I'm going to let you see it or not. But if it's no good, I'll just do another one. 25 minutes coming up. Thank you if you listen to here, please. But we need to get with the program, guys. You want something to be done? We can do it. And it starts here. Really. It starts with Elizabeth Rata's speech. Go and watch it.